Okay, so welcome everyone to our study abroad podcast series. So today we have Akash Nair from Edmonton, Canada, with us, and he'll be sharing his journey of study abroad. So welcome Akash to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Vishal sir. Glad to be here.
So we have a few questions prepared for you, and then we'll discuss based on your answers, probably some cross questions, maybe. so, so the very first question I'll have is. When you were deciding about this college of to go for PhD, how did you decide which college to go for, and what was your initial motivation to join this college?
Well, I did not have an idea on as to which college I should go for because I am doing a PhD and I was about to do a PhD. I mainly focused on the research group and the kind of research these research groups were involved with. So initially, I had a few countries in my mind. Of course, the US was there, Australia, and the Europe. But surprisingly, I came across the research group which I'm part of right now, which is called the Signal Analysis and Imaging Group at the University of Alberta. And the supervisor was exceptional in the field, and the research output was definitely excellent. So I decided to opt for the research group more than the university. But luckily, the ranking of the university and the facilities that the university provides is definitely one of the best in Canada and the world. Its QS World ranking is within 100. So I think I got lucky in the with the fact that I got a good university with definitely a great research group.
So you applied to like multiple colleges. How many colleges did you apply roughly?
Well, officially I applied to just this University of Alberta, but there were two projects which were who were looking to recruit PhD students in Europe. One was at ETH Zurich. I applied there, but I did not hear from them back. Probably I was rejected. And then the second was TU Delft. I cleared the interview, but they wanted me to join a month before I graduate, which wasn't really feasible. So I decided to let that opportunity go. And yes, University of Alberta was the only other university where I applied.
Okay, so you applied to, let's say, like three colleges, and then you finally opted for one of them. Did you write to the professors before applying? Like, did you do any connections with professors through email, LinkedIn, etc.?
Yes, I contacted my current supervisor before I applied to know if there is a vacant position available so that to ensure that I am applying at the right place. For example, if I'm applying, that means I'm spending my money and my time to do something which would really matter to me. So to ensure that okay, there is going to be an outcome of it, it's always better to um, contact the supervisor before applying, whoever it's in your mind. So luckily, there was a position available at that time, so it went fine with me.
So, how did you contact these professors? LinkedIn or email or any other way?
I contacted him through email, but we were connected through someone, as in his one of his previous student was a supervisor of a project I was involved with. So he helped me contact him because certain professors are very busy, so they might get tons of cold emails. So if you have a reference from someone, it always helps. So I got a reference from one of his previous students who happened to be a connection of mine, and he helped me connect to the professor.
Okay, okay, sure, sure. And what was the visa application like in documentation of visa, etc.?
Well, it was pretty straightforward. I required my transcripts and degree certificates from my other two previous education. Then I needed the financial proof to show that I have enough funding from the university to do my PhD. Then I needed my what else? There were a few forms which I was supposed to fill in. Those were like personal details, things like that. Then I had my biometrics done. I needed a medical certificate, the letter of acceptance from the university, my passport, the passport size photos. Um, then I needed a client information where I had a letter written explaining why I want to do a PhD in Canada and what are my other aspirations and why would I come back to India. So those kind of things had to be written. So yeah, it was pretty straightforward. There are tons of YouTube resources available in case someone wants to get through. Um, One of the particular channels that I liked the most was by someone called Abdul Rahman. He has detailed explanations of how to apply for a visa for a study permit basically in Canada. But I think there are a few changes with the study permit application from this year onwards. So the videos may or may not be as helpful as it was for me. So the people who are applying should be careful with the videos that are available because of the change in the process. A bit
Did
changed.
you did you have to write a, like an English test, IELTS, TOEFL for your application?
No, because University of Alberta has a list of institutions who are exempted from the English proficiency exams, IELTS and TOEFL. Given that you have a medium of instruction letter from your latest university, and it had to be a 2 years course. Fortunately, my previous institute, IIT Kharagpur, was in the list of exempted universities. So I got a letter from the institute which said that English was the medium of instruction there. And that letter was sufficient enough to show that am proficient in English. So that helped for not just my university application, but also for the visa.
Sure, sure. And was getting this letter from the IIT easy, or some steps were involved? Like, was it, how was the experience?
It was very simple because they have a common letter issued to all the students, and it can be downloaded directly from the institute's website. So it is not issued to individual students, and it is mentioned on that letter that we do not issue it to individual students. So that helps. It's very
Okay, okay. It's
simple.
like a general, generic letter written to all the colleges, etc. That okay, we are taught, we teach
Right,
in English, so don't worry about it.
right.
Okay. So once you got all your visa done, your application process, etc., visa, then comes the like the flight and the accommodation. So how was that selection for you? How did you choose your flight and accommodation?
Well, it was my first international trip, so I wanted to be on the safer side. So I preferred having a direct flight to Canada instead of having multiple layovers because I was not 100% sure of the visa norms for Indian nationals in different countries at that time. So just to be on the safer side, I decided to go for direct flights. There were only two airlines which provides direct flights from India to Canada, which was Air India and Air Canada. And I chose the cheaper option, which was Air Canada at that time. So I had a direct flight from Delhi to Toronto, which was 17 hours. Then I had a 5 hours layovers at Toronto, and then another 5 hours flight from Toronto to Edmonton. This was the quickest way we can reach Edmonton from Delhi. Um, then yeah, I mean, now that I'm aware of the visa regulations and everything, I think if I had the knowledge which I have right now, I might have chosen KLM, which gives a direct flight from Delhi to Amsterdam and then Amsterdam to Edmonton. So it's also real quick. So that was my. I did not do a lot of research because there are very few airlines. There is KLM, Qatar Airways, Air India, and Air Canada. These are the only four airlines which we can actually go through. But there are other possibilities. There are multiple combinations of airlines available. You can go for British Airways up to Vancouver and then take a flight to Edmonton from there onwards. There are options, but I wanted to be on the safer side at that time because, as I said, it was my first international trip. And about the accommodation, I think I got lucky again because I had a senior living in Edmonton at that time, and he helped me arrange an accommodation. He arranged a room in the same house as he was living, so it was very easy for me. But of course, I did my research to find out what are the accommodations available. So just for general information, I would like to say that there are two possibilities. Either you can opt for accommodation within the university provided by the university for which you have to apply, and it's on a first come first serve basis, but it is definitely more expensive than any other accommodation that you can find outside the university. So to manage my finances, I decided to opt for outside the campus accommodation, which we have to arrange ourselves. So as I said, my senior helped me, so it was easy for me. But if you have to find out an off-campus accommodation, you have to go to Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji or Rent Faster. These are the three main websites where you can find accommodation. So people, landlords, and property managers, they upload properties which are to be rented out for different months. All the information are given there. 99% of the times it is safe, but of course there can be problems with the properties. But if you know someone living in the city, you can ask them to just go and have a background check of the house done. So that definitely helps. So accommodation shouldn't be a difficult problem. Edmonton has enough, uh, you know, accommodations all around, so it's not that bad.
So after all this, you would have taken your flight to Edmonton with all the layovers and all. So how was that flight journey and landing and coming to your accommodation? Was there any glitch or something? Anything you learned?
Um, it was smooth for me generally. It's just that I was way too tired before I took the flight because packing, you're moving, you're basically gonna live in a different country for the next 4 years. So it's like moving into a different country, which can be stressful. So I was definitely exhausted before I boarded the flight. So as I boarded the flight, I was very sleepy. I was very tired. So I did not even realize how those 17 hours went by. After getting out of the plane at Toronto, I had to go through the immigration, which was quite smooth as well. I did not face any hard questions. In fact, I was not asked any question at all. Um, and then I waited. I mean, I just had to wait at the for the next flight. After I got down at Edmonton, there was a kiosk set up by the University of Alberta where coupons were given to the incoming students for taxis. And there were volunteers who helped you get taxis as well. So a volunteer helped me get a taxi with the voucher. And I knew that where I was supposed to go because I already had my accommodation. I think in fact, 100% of the students, if I'm not wrong, would have an arrangement for accommodation, at least temporarily before they reach, maybe an Airbnb or a hotel. So if you know the address, you can directly put in the address and then move around. So I had my accommodation arranged, so I directly came to my house. It was around 4 p.m. in Edmonton at that time. I was pretty jet lagged because I was sleepy because I slept during the 17 hours flight. So after those 17 hours, it was almost 12 hours since those 17 hours had passed. So I was sleepy by then. But, I could not have slept because it was 4 p.m. And then I had to go for grocery shopping because there are certain things which you can't bring from India, which you would need urgently. So my senior who was here helped me to go to the neighborhood shopping center and we got it. Um, I did not really face any glitch. It was very smooth for me. I think I'm very grateful for that because I had, by God's grace, I had good seniors who helped me to settle down really well. But maybe one incident that I can share was that I was not expecting to see sunset at 9 p.m. um, yeah, so that was the only shocking thing which I came across that particular day. Apart from that, was decent. The temperature was also fine because it was just the end of August, so it's not that cold in Edmonton. Um, yeah, it was good for me.
So where is your hometown in India?
I am from Delhi, but I'm a Malayali, so my parents are based out of Kerala.
Okay, okay. So you're living in Delhi and then you took the flight from Delhi, so it was
Yeah,
no extra flight for you or extra journey for you that way.
right. Yeah.
So once you, let's say, settle down first few weeks or 1 or 2 week, you had any classes, courses that you had to also do, or it was directly a research start or something?
No, I had one coursework that semester and I had to teach one course as well. That was a great experience, I would say.
So when you had to teach the subject, the TA thing, right? Like.
Yeah.
the teaching assistantship, you had to prepare for that subject. So when you were doing that, did you realize that you maybe lacked some information back in India, that you had to maybe go through it again and again just to make sure that the teaching is all smooth? Like you had to prepare enough. Like what was your confidence level like when you were preparing for that?
I was pretty confident because I had some teaching experience back home, so I knew I always enjoyed teaching, and probably teaching was one of the major reasons which drove me to research and PhD because I eventually want to end up in academia. So I was not tensed about it, I was confident about it. But in terms of knowledge, yes, because I did not have a physics background. My bachelor's was in geology and then my master's was in geophysics. But I had to teach physics to first year engineering students. It was, although it was a lab uh, course, but then still, you will have, I would be the only instructor in that class. It's the teaching, it's called teaching assistant, but still, I would be the only instructor. So I would be bombarded with questions. I knew that, but luckily we are trained before we have the classes. So we are given the list of expected questions. We are trained how to go about every experiment. So it was definitely easier for me. It was not that hard. But then I was also a teaching assistant for a tutorial setup where students would come in and solve questions together. So me with the professor would help the students solve the questions. And that would be difficult for me. That was kind of difficult for me because I students can ask basically anything related to the course. Although we were given a set of questions and the answers, but sometimes you have to explain concepts related to the question that they are solving. So I had to prepare a bit more for that. That was the only thing. Apart from that, it was easy.
And how do you see the education system or like overall classroom structure of, let's say, India versus Canada?
Um, well, okay. It's I have I've been to two universities in India, and my master's institute was quite different from my bachelor's. I did my bachelor's from University of Delhi, and I think the setup of University of Alberta was quite similar to University of, what was quite similar to IIT Kharagpur. Um, okay, how do I compare it? Well, I
No,
think,
maybe in your lab also, like, you may have done lab also, right, in India, and then
yeah.
you're teaching a lab. So how do you see that lab setup
Okay, I
standards?
can talk about that. In India, we are given a lab manual and we just copy down things. The only change that we make in lab manual is the result and the conclusion. Whatever value we get, we just change that down. Rest, procedure, materials required, all of that is basically the same. We copy from the lab manual. But here, the students are expected to write everything on their own. So that was something I found different from the education in India, that students are the plagiarism is taken very seriously here. We have softwares to check plagiarism, so that was definitely one of the things. Apart from that, I think there is a bigger focus on hands-on, application-based teaching rather than and learning rather than mugging up things. So that was there. Second was that the students are always up to date with the information because the professors themselves are always up to date with the latest resources, let it be the books or the softwares or whatever is there in the job market. The students are informed about whatever there is as of now, not let's say 30 years ago, which I felt was lacking in India because we would be following textbooks which are the traditional textbooks which were written maybe 50 years ago. But there are lots of advancement in different fields. So I think it's always best to be up to date with the information, which the professors here definitely were. And then I said application based and hands-on learning was there, and then there were a few courses which did not focus on exam. So I had a course which had no exam basically. I had to just present, I had to read, I had to write my own paper, which were used for the evaluation process. Apart from that, I think students gain a lot of independence by doing, I mean, students are more independent here rather than in India, for sure, because we have a greater dependence on our teachers there. The teachers are also have different expectations from the students that they would come and approach you for different things. But here, the professors know that, okay, of course, if we approach the professors, they wouldn't say no to anything. But it's just that the professors know that the students are independent enough themselves to do research about it, solve questions, and then maybe approach the professor for help. So, maybe if I have doubt on very simple question, instead of Googling or just doing my research about it, I might go to a professor in India. But here, I would first do my own research before I would approach my professor because that is expected of me. So these were the few changes that I noticed in the education system in India versus my current university in Canada.
So there is this cultural difference in developed countries like Canada versus India that you have to do your cooking, cleaning, washing clothes, etc. by your own, which you may not be so used to doing, back in India when you were studying at other colleges. How was that transition? How was that transition happened for you?
Okay, so there are three things, of course. Laundry is easy here because most of the houses have in-house laundry facility, a washing machine and a dryer. So it's not that hard. And I think even back home it wasn't that hard because we had washing machines in the hostels of different institutes. And then about cleaning, I am a bit of germophobic, so I was always involved with cleaning and I really enjoy it. So it wasn't that difficult for me. But cooking, as expected, because we Indians love our mom's food. So we are used to of eating I mean, food cooked by our family, or if you are at hostel, we have mess facility. But here, definitely, you have to cook on your own. It was difficult for me because I have never done cooking back home. I was just cooking basic stuff. Initially, it was difficult in managing even the time because I was really slow in cooking, but I had to take care of many more things because I was living independently. So eventually over the period of a few months I realized, okay, these are things which I can make quickly if I don't have time to do the prep, or if I'm really tired to cook. So there are a few recipes which I can quickly go through, but if I have time I can maybe do something else. And I have, over the period of time, I have developed my cooking skills, I would say, and I've become faster in it. So it takes some time, it took me some time to go about it, but eventually one manages. So it's not that difficult. Um, to provide general information, if you are finding it way too difficult to find time to cook, or it's just definitely not your forte, there are tiffin services available all throughout different major cities of Canada. And those are the Indian tiffin services. I had it for a month when I had my exams, and I was very busy that month. So I decided to go for a tiffin service that month. But um, I realized it is better for me to cook myself because I mean, I wasn't enjoying the food, let's say. After a month, it felt really monotonous. So I decided to just cook myself. And now I have a schedule and I know how to go about it. So it's just easier for me.
So have you ever tried like cooking for one day and eating for like several days?
Oh, yes. So that was a whole process. Initially, it took me the first week I was here, it took me 4 hours to cook. And I would that would might last for 2 3 days. And I realized, okay, I can't spend 4 hours thrice a week. So I started doing bulk cooking. I would cook on Saturdays or Sundays. And for the entire semester, I would just cook on the Saturdays and Sundays and store the food for the entire week. But then by the time it's Thursday or Friday, you get so bored of the food that you really you don't look forward to the meal part of the day. So I realized, okay, this is again not working for me. So maybe I can split my time into smaller sections. So that's what I'm doing right now. I cook around for 45 minutes or 30 to 45 minutes a day. And it's working with me. I can make whatever I feel like eating that particular day. um But yes, storing the food, and also, I'm living in a shared accommodation, so you don't have a lot of refrigerator space. So there are lots of things to consider while doing this, and also, it's just that you get bored of the food easily if you are cooking for the entire week. It might work for some of the weeks when you are too busy, but otherwise, I prefer having different foods on different days.
Sure, sure, sure. And so usually PhD students get lot of opportunity to go in conferences, etc. You have been to some of the conferences?
Yes, I went to Geo Convention, which was held in Calgary last month. And because it's just my first year into PhD, I have not done a lot of work to go to different international conferences. But there are people in my research group who have been to EAGE in Europe, um, who are going to Image, which is going to happen this month, the end of this month. Then there were students who went to Geo Convention as me. um, yeah, so there are different conferences which happen, and we get funded for those conferences from the university. In
Sure,
India,
sure.
I think you have to apply to different agencies and in institutes for the funding, but here your professor actually funds your conferences, so it's
Correct.
very easy.
Sure, sure. And the whole PhD is also funded. There is like no tuition fee almost. And then there is this monthly stipend that you get. So it's as good as like a part-time job kind of setup for you.
That is true. We are funded. We have a stipend, but we definitely have a fee component, and which I think is not nominal. Around 20% of our stipend goes directly into our fees. The fees is deducted from our stipend, and then whatever is the remaining amount is paid to us. Sometimes more than 20% is deducted. So it varies from semester to semester. For example, during the summer months, there was no course. The university was mainly closed. Only we were doing our research and there were no classes happening. So the fees was less. But now during the fall and the winter, the fees would go higher because there would be courses and there would be facilities of the university which we'll be using. So during these months, we'll have a higher deduction. Yeah, but that's the entire thing. But we get enough funding to have a decent life here.
You did any other part-time job also, like tutoring or anything like in the stores, etc.?
In No, no, I have not done any of the part-time job, luckily, because firstly, we get funded enough to have a decent life, as I said. Um, and also I was pretty occupied with my coursework and teaching in my first year. And during the summer months, I was thinking of maybe getting a part-time job, but then again, um, I decided that it's better to focus on my research rather than going for a part-time job. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Okay, so coming to the last two questions. So, what would be few advices, like some packing tips or some other advices that you would like to give your juniors who would like to pursue this PhD or even masters abroad? Any tips that you would like to give, which you probably thought that you should have had something like some pro tips?
Right, with the packing. So I did a mistake with the packing because I was again referring to different YouTube videos for packing, but I came across a video where they listed several things and which I bought as well. But later I realized that the person was traveling in Air India, which allowed three suitcases. But I was traveling in Air Canada, which allowed only two suitcases. So I had purchased a hell lot more stuffs than required. And eventually, during the packing, I realized, okay, I'm going overweight. I need to remove stuffs. And then that was very difficult because, you have those things in your right in front of you, which you can't carry because it's going overweight, and you have to decide which one to keep, which one to remove. So first of all, check with your airlines about the weight, how much weight you're allowed. In my case, with my ticket, only 23 kgs of check-in luggage was allowed. But I added another luggage to it, another 23 kgs, because of course 23 kgs is not sufficient when you're moving to a different country. At the initial stage, definitely you need two luggage. So the things that I carried were firstly a few things which you would require as soon as you reach for the initial few days, because as I said, I had someone who helped me with the grocery shopping, but everyone may not have connections to a city which you're moving to. So maybe some packets of quick food which you can make at your convenience, which wouldn't require a lot of ingredients. You know, people usually carry Maggie, biscuits, stuffs like that. Those are definitely essential for the initial few days. Maybe a few utensils, then your clothes. Depending on what city you are moving to, please ensure that you know what kind of temperature you're moving to right away. Because in Edmonton, it's definitely very cold, but the time when I moved in was not that cold. It was on the warmer side, it was in 20s. The temperature was in 20 degrees, 20s. Um, the first day I landed was 32, but later onwards it started dipping to even 10 degrees during the night. So I had to be prepared accordingly. Clothes, yeah, few utensils, of course, your gadgets, whatever you need. Mostly buying your gadgets. If you have a gadget, you can carry definitely. But if you're about to buy a new gadget, it's definitely better to buy it here rather than buying it back home in India, because firstly, it's cheaper, and secondly, you might have to. It's just easier with the cords and everything because you have different cables here, and the plugin is also different, so it's just easier to buy it here. Um, yeah, those are my few tips for packing. So it would be good if you consult someone who is already living in the city. So, because I moved into a bigger city, it's the fifth largest city in Canada. So I have access to many more stores than maybe if you're moving to a smaller city. So you have to be careful with what kind of place you're moving into. So that's very important. And some advice that I would like to give is, firstly, the whole idea and the whole thing of moving to a different country can be quite stressful and overwhelming. And during this time, one might forego their health, just ignore the health. But please don't do that, because eventually health is what matters. If you're moving into a different country with bad health, that's not good at all, because you are not accustomed to the healthcare system of a new country, and you are starting something afresh where you need to have 100% focus. So your mental health is important, not just your physical health. So emotionally, you need to be sound as well. And it has to be a balance of everything. So just do not ignore your health at all during the entire process. I understand it can be stressful, but we have to manage it. That's the first advice I would like to give. And second is, managing the finances is extremely important. For managing, you need to have a good plan. So talking to people who are already living in the city and who is experiencing the same kind of things. For example, my experience, I would not be able to share my experience with an undergrad, because he's going to have different lifestyle, he will have different setup. So my experience would be matching with someone who is coming for PhD. So if a PhD student is approaching me, I'll be able to that person will be able to resonate well with me rather than an undergrad. So talk to a person who will be in your similar setup, and plan your and manage your finances accordingly. Because you don't want to move into a city with with minute amount of finances, because there wouldn't be anybody to help you out and you're far from home. So the finances is definitely you need to plan very, very carefully.
Okay, thank you, Akash, for all the valuable knowledge and your experience to our audience. And we hope some of the juniors would get some pro tips from this podcast, and they can avoid some mistakes, and they can be uh, they can have a bit of an easy life listening to this podcast. So thank you very much for your time. So now we'll stop the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I had a great time, and I hope my advices, my suggestions, and whatever I experienced or whatever I said would be useful to a lot more students. And you're doing a great job, Vishal, because I wish I had something like this to during when I am, when I planned everything. If I had an access to a podcast series like this, it would have been great. So I think this is going to be very helpful for the students who are planning to come here.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you
for
so
now.
much. Yeah.